All right, hello everyone. I'm BMillzebub, and welcome to my channel tonight for Apostate interviews. We're starting kind of late, but in my defense, which actually had to make some bread, which she tells me turned out pretty nicely. So, which I know you're muted at the moment, but can you do a little bit of self-promotion? Tell us about yourself and your channel.
Sure. I've got a channel called What the Craft. My husband and I basically talk about stuff. He's an atheist and I'm a pagan, so we kind of come at it from the different viewpoints and just kind of discuss things.
It's a pretty interesting concept. How'd you come up with that?
That's just kind of what we do. Like, that's an average night for us, just to kind of sit around and talk about weird viewpoints on things and see what we can meet in the middle on and try and get on the same page, or at least understand each other's points of view on it. So we just started filming it. And now it's a channel.
Well, I mean, people start with less, so you've actually got a pretty good start on your channel. So at least you've got topics.
Yeah, we do have that.
Right, so I'm guessing that you weren't always a pagan, right?
No, not always, but it's been so long that I've kind of forgotten how to be Christian. Like, there are a few things that have kind of hung around that were hard to work through, but I was raised Southern Baptist. And at 13 kind of went, oh, wait. What's the language rules on your channel?
As long as you aren't being like racist, ableist, or otherwise demeaning, I don't care.
Okay, so I was raised Southern Baptist, and at 13 kind of went, I have a vagina and hate being told what to do, so I quit going. And I started looking at paganism from that point, and I'm now old enough to know better and too young to care. I guess that's an age, right?
I mean, that's kind of an interesting jump, though, from Southern Baptist, which, as I understand it, is a fairly conservative form of Christianity, right?
It is, but the weird thing, I grew up in the foothills of North Carolina, and AFM, Appalachian Folk Magic, is a really big thing in the mountain areas there. And it had found its way in to the church my grandparents went to, actually. My grandmother could remove warts, remove fire from burns, things like that. That witchcraft, basically, but was okay somehow for her to do that and be a Southern Baptist Christian. So I kind of started looking into the things that my grandmother was doing, figured out that that was witchcraft, and started looking into paganism.
So not a whole lot of emphasis on the Bible passage that says you shall not suffer a witch to live.
She didn't consider herself to be a witch at all. It was a gift somehow. With Appalachian folk magic, and the date of it happening just left my brain. There was kind of, I think it was called the Great Revival, when Protestant beliefs kind of swept through. And when that happened, these folk magic beliefs just got kind of mixed in, and they're considered gifts from God, not witchcraft. So there's a lot of country grannies that do a lot of things like that while muttering various Bible verses, and it's not considered witchcraft.
So it's kind of like what the Catholic Church used to do when it went to a new region. Like when the Catholic Church basically invaded Scandinavia, they adopted certain pagan traditions, the Yule tree and all that they picked up to, kind of help ease the transition. It's kind of one of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the I guess American version of that happening.
I've never heard of. I don't think I've heard of Protestants doing that. It's fairly common, especially with ancient Rome.
It's pretty, from what from what I've gathered so far, because I'm researching Appalachian folk magic right now. From what I've gathered, it's fairly exclusive to the Appalachian Mountain region, and mainly to the areas that took the longest for things like doctors and education and things like that to reach. So the more remote the area, the longer these beliefs kind of hung around, and people weren't willing to give them up. So in those areas, the church kind of had to figure out a way to make it okay, or people were just going to be like, we don't need you. We've been taking care of ourselves for however long anyway. I think Pennsylvania Dutch beliefs may be an, I don't want to say offshoot, but a similar form of the Appalachian folk magic. But it's a blending of Irish, Scottish, and Germanic beliefs, because those were the main settlers to come. And then after slavery ended, there's 3 or 4 African-based belief systems that got mixed in as well. So there's a lot going on there to kind of figure out.
And this is the Pennsylvania Dutch version of Appalachian folk magic, or
No, this is Appalachian folk magic. I'm not that familiar with the Pennsylvania Dutch, but I've talked to a few people who are, and they seem similar to Appalachian folk magic.
Okay. Is Appalachian folk magic something you practice, or are you just kind of in your research phase of it?
I'm in the research phase of it right now. There are a few things that I apparently grew up with that I didn't realize were part of that. But outside of that, my practice is mostly witchcraft as a kind of like practical everyday tool for me. And then I'm researching the Appalachian folk magic as the belief aspect of what I do.
Can you give us an example of what it is you practice? Because I tried my hand at magic before, and it didn't at all pan out.
I call my craft down and dirty because I only do things when something comes up that needs to be taken care of. And my focus is mainly with herbs and in the kitchen. So it wouldn't look like witchcraft to anybody. It's like I make my own chicken broth from bones so that when anybody in the house gets sick, I can make them chicken noodle soup, which is, a traditional, oh, you're not feeling good, here, let me give you food. Then you go and research it and you find out, oh, hey, making homemade chicken broth is actually really healthy because it pulls all the minerals and nutrients and stuff out of the bones into the broth. So it actually does help when you're sick. So it doesn't seem like witchcraft to a lot of people because now science has done its research part of it and it's figured out why these things actually do work. But to me, I still consider it witchcraft because that's where it came from.
All right. Now, what would you say to people that would say you're moving the goalpost with that?
How am I moving the goalpost? Can you
like going from sort of a we don't know, but it works, therefore magic, almost like a God of the Gaps sort of thing. But now that there's scientific evidence that there's some effectiveness to it, just be like, well, I mean, yeah, okay, but it's still witchcraft. I'm not saying that's
I look at it from an additive perspective rather than a reductive perspective. So, like the chicken soup example that I used, rather than once science figures out what's actually going on there and why it works, removing the witchcraft aspect or view of it, I just add the scientific explanation. Does that make sense?
It does.
That I don't intend to come across as moving the goalpost, but I don't understand reductive viewpoints in that way either. It kind of really seems, I don't know. It just seems weird to me that just because you figure out something, now you're going to take an aspect of it away.
I mean, I don't want you to think that's what I'm saying you're doing. It's just, criticism that might pop up. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one that pops up.
Okay. So, I'm trying to think, cause do you have any other examples of what you do, or something that people like me and the vast majority of my audience might think is a little more out there?
Oh, I don't know, because it all just seems normal to me. And I've been doing it for like 20 years, so I don't know what would seem like out there. I guess that I make moon water, but that's just kind of a thing I have for if I'm working with candles. So, I don't know, I guess working with candles might seem weird to people.
I mean, what's moon water? I'm not familiar with that.
It's water that you have set out under a specific phase of the moon, usually the full moon, to charge it with the moon's energies. Yeah, that one probably does kind of seem out there.
Yeah, that one's seeming a little strange to me. But
and I have to say too, it's odd for me to actually talk about my practice because I'm just in the habit of keeping it to myself. One, from being raised and still living in a conservative area, and the other, it's just not part of the norm to really just hey, here's my religious beliefs and practices. You have to listen to them just because I say you do. Like, it's just really kind of odd to talk about.
Yeah, actually, that is something that I've noticed about pretty much every pagan I come across. You have your beliefs, you some pagans worship whatever god, but pretty much every pagan I have come across that worships a god keeps it to themselves. They don't go out proselytizing at people. That's,
Yeah, a common view is, it's it is so difficult to generalize when you're discussing pagans of on anything. But a common view is it's not really our place to tell you your path. The whole point of it is for you to figure it out yourself and do the learning and do the research and do all of that yourself. So if we were to tell you, then that's kind of taking all of that experience away from you.
I wish more theists would pick would pick up that perspective. That'd be great.
It would be nice.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm out of questions for paganism for the moment. I'm almost certain I'll think of more as we go. But what do you think was, I don't know if I want to say the craziest thing from the Southern Baptist Church you used to go to, but let me rephrase that to ask, what's something you liked least about it?
um, Growing up as a tomboy in the South, it was definitely the view that women had to sit down, shut up, and pop out babies. Because no, that was I was working on my dirt bike and playing softball and roaming around the woods by myself. I didn't have time to learn how to be a quote unquote proper woman. I wasn't interested in it at all. And I had opinions of my own that I wasn't going to keep to myself if somebody was being an idiot. So that was definitely the least favorite thing.
All right. So, I mean, was it just that got you to start really questioning whether you believed in Christianity, or what got you to start asking questions?
The dichotomy of what I had to sit through and listen to in church and watching the interplay between my grandparents. Um, I've told you the view of what the church had of women.
Yeah.
But then outside of church, grandma ran the house. Papa wasn't about to piss her off for nothing. And she was not going to keep her opinions to herself about anything. So it just, I never understood why it was okay, but that's not what the church said. So then I just started questioning everything. And then my grandpa was very much of the opinion if you missed sermon on Sunday, catch the preacher at the bar on Friday. But drinking was supposed to be bad. And it was just the back and forth between what was said and what was actually done that just didn't sit with me at all.
Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty reasonable points to start taking questions from. And your grandpa definitely sounds like a smart man staying out of your grandma's way.
Yeah.
So, like, what was those are the questions you started asking yourself. What is the straw that broke the camel's back?
A combination of realizing what was expected of me just because of the body I happened to be born into, and the lack of balance in the religion. Like everything in moderation. That's the catchphrase that you hear repeated all the time. Everything in moderation now. But it wasn't that way. It was all or nothing, and generally very much all male or nothing. And I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Particularly in the more conservative versions of any religion, women tend to get screwed over pretty badly and don't get a lot of, or if any, consideration. So
Yeah.
I kind of get that being the thing that had you boot yourself out.
Yeah, and I mean, it was to the point like our church had a softball team, but only the guys could play. And I played softball at school. And I'm just like, what? This makes no sense to me at all.
So you probably looked at all the guys that were playing on the church team and were like, I'm better than you, I'm better than you, I'm better than you, I'm definitely better than you. And kind of thought this is
maybe
play.
Maybe with a couple of them. I knew a couple of tricks that I used during practice that made things a lot better during the game that a lot of the guys didn't know. So, like regulation, you have to use an aluminum bat. If you practice with a wood bat, you can swing an aluminum bat a heck of a lot harder.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was a female. I'm not supposed to know things like that. So, it's like, okay, whatever. Go get your butt beat. I don't care.
Turn up the brightness on my computer a little bit so I can actually see. Julie LaVoice actually says only boys could play fucking softball. that would be for her church team.
Yeah, at church, sports were only for guys.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's one way to do it. I mean, if you're gonna exclude half the population of your church from doing something, it's one way to alienate them, make them feel unwanted.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's another. Well, I mean, you've kind of already said that, but it sounds like a pretty big, like maybe a bigger factor in getting you to leave than you mentioned earlier, was feeling pushed out.
Yeah, it was just, I never understood the focus on the inequality of men and women. Like, I did not understand that at all. And the view that this category of actions and jobs and hobbies and things were only for men. And then, women could sew and crochet and knit and quilt and cook and all of that, but they needed to stay over there. And I'm over here going, I can crochet. I love to cook. and I know how to change the oil and spark plugs on my dirt bike and in my car. And why can't I know how to do this? Like, I don't understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was weird.
I mean, it sounds pretty detrimental to real life too. If you're not supposed to be learning, I'm assuming your church would have been not, or former church would have not been so okay with you learning how to like change oil in a car or other things that are traditionally viewed as masculine.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be doing any of that.
So if they had their way, it, I mean, they might have been against you driving too, but if you were driving by yourself and your car broke down in the middle of the night on the road and there was no one else around, they would expect you to hope like hell you have cell signal. I mean, this is possibly
Yep.
before cell phones were widely around, but they would expect you to hope there was cell signal so you could call AAA.
Yeah, that's basically what they would have expected. Uh, the end goal basically was to it, have the female, by the time she's old enough to marry, in a situation of going from entirely dependent on her father to entirely dependent on her husband.
Huh.
And I was too stubborn for that crap. So it didn't work out very well.
I'm actually a little curious about kind of the flip side to that. I'm sure your church would not have been okay with the men knowing how to crochet or but how would they feel about men having basic skills like cooking?
We had a guy that made absolutely wonderful, delicious cakes and was ridiculed and picked on and cracked jokes about how feminine he was and all of that constantly.
But cooking is a basic life skill that people need. You can't.
It's a woman's. If it did not go on the grill, I don't think I ever saw my grandfather cook it. That was how cooking was segregated in their house. If it was cooked on the stove inside or in the oven, my grandmother did it. If it was on the grill, then it was okay for the man to do it.
That's just dumb.
Yeah, it really is.
I don't really need any spectacular argument against that because that's just dumb.
It completely is.
I mean, there are certain basic life skills I think everyone should have. You should be able to cook. You should hypothetically be able to do at least basic maintenance on your car in case it breaks down. You should be able to protect yourself. And the
We
idea
had
that someone should abstain from any of that is
my
dumb.
my grandmother could drive, but she could not put gas in the car. So my grandfather would make sure that either the car had enough gas in it or there was one gas station left that was a full service gas station where they would actually come out and pump your gas for you. And my grandmother would go there.
I that's nuts to me. I don't get that at all. Like, why?
Just how they were raised.
And either way, these are basic skills. I don't know. Let's move on before I get too massively hung up on forcing people to live without, the most basic of skills to not die. So you said that you and your husband would have these philosophical, religious, or just basically whatever discussion privately. What got you to start actually recording them?
Lack of how do I word this? Lack of non-fluffy bunny pagan content, and also appreciation for pagans and polytheists and atheists to find common ground.
Okay, so you're kind of doing it to give a little extra representation.
A little bit, yeah. And from a perspective of not talking about my beliefs and my practices, but talking about just stupid laws and regulations that come up that atheists and pagans can agree on.
Now, do you think there's more
For
that
an
atheists
example,
and pagans tend to agree on?
I honestly think we pretty. I think we can agree on a lot, and I think if the atheist is not anti-theist, then we could almost agree on anything except the belief aspect.
See, you're actually talking to an anti-theist right now.
I know. But actually, have you watched Ocean's anti-superstition video?
I haven't watched a lot of Ocean's content.
That might be worth a watch because he kind of breaks it down to where rather than being he does it better in his video, and I'm going to muck it all up if I try to explain it. But it's basically anti-religious harm rather than just flat out anti-religious beliefs. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, it also might be in how you define the term because, yeah, I'm against religion. I would prefer it if such establishments didn't exist at all. In fact, I personally think that would greatly benefit society. But by that same token, and this is what I think a lot of people who don't like anti-theists get it wrong, I don't support forcing people to stop practicing their religion. I am actually one of those people that would join people marching in the streets if religion was attempted to be abolished. So a little bit of weird self-contradiction there, but while I may personally believe something does more harm than good, I'm not necessarily willing to take away people's rights. You know what I mean?
So we would be on the same side of the argument of freedom of religion, in that it's a right to be able to practice your religious beliefs, but it is not a right to inflict your beliefs onto other people or to completely prohibit beliefs.
Bingo.
To an extent, defining harm, yada, 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 down the rabbit hole we go. But for the most part.
Yep, you hit the nail right on the head. Just because I personally believe something doesn't really mean I have a right to inflict that belief on someone else. Just like, and I'm mostly speaking legally here, because if someone wants to, grab a megaphone and start screaming into it in the streets, as long as they don't literally scream it into someone's ear and cause their eardrum to rupture, I really don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I might possibly make an argument for noise pollution at that point, but then again, that's a lot of work, and I'd probably just ignore them.
Yeah, and they don't have, from my perspective, any right to inflict their beliefs on me through law, just like I have no right to inflict the idea that religion shouldn't exist on people by law, because the right to religious belief, as much as I dislike religious belief, is an inalienable right. So, and that's where I stand on it, and that's where I think a lot of people get anti-theism very wrong, because pretty much every anti-theist I know is on exactly the same page as me. I haven't come across any that say, well, that's not true. I've come across a few that say religion should be abolished, but the Soviet Union tried that, and look at how that turned out.
It might be worth giving his video a watch, because it sounds like it matches up to what you're saying.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think here. Okay, that's where I left off. So, I mean, we've kind of talked about what got you to start making the videos and what the goal of your channel is. Is there anything that you're particularly proud of that you've done on your channel?
Oof. It's a very new channel, and we've not done very much.
Well, I mean, out of what you've done.
I think we could have done it better, because we filmed it at 2 a.m. and we're deliriously tired. But can ritual be beneficial outside of religion? That was one of my favorite topics that we've talked about so far.
I think I actually caught that one live. I'm pretty sure I did. So
we haven't done anything live yet. We haven't gone live yet, but might have caught it like right when we uploaded it.
I don't know. Maybe you premiered it, because I seem to remember a live chat.
I might have. I don't remember, to be honest. I have a terrible memory.
So do I. I can't remember names for the life of me. Like, I have to be around someone constantly for at least a week before their name will stick.
Yeah, I'm a face person. I'm not a name person.
Yeah, I can do faces all day, but names, you need to give me a while. Yeah. But, I mean, do you have any more pagan-y stuff that you want to talk about? I mean, this interview is meant to help you out with self-promotion a little bit, so.
Okay, put me on the spot.
I mean, is it really putting you on the spot if I told you hours ago that this is pretty much for promoting my guest?
Well, no, but at the same time, I was in the middle of making 4 loaves of bread plus dinner, so I didn't exactly make notes for tonight either. I honestly can't think of anything right off the top of my head. like right now, I'm just in the middle of trying to track down sources for Appalachian folk magic. So right now, I'm trying to learn about root work, which is interesting. It's looking like the overlap from all the different paths are around like the healing arts. So that it's kind of interesting to see all the different ways of trying to tackle things and then learning what's been like, nope, that does not work. That is a very bad idea. Don't do that. And things that actually do work. So,
All right. Randolph Richardson has a question for you. He would like to know what the craziest thing you've encountered in paganism is.
oh, I don't know if I can put them in a hierarchy because crazy is as crazy does sometimes. I don't. I guess this whole crystal fad. I just. I get okay. This is the craziest thing to me is the chucking the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to the medical community and herbal remedies. Like, I don't get it. If you need to go to the doctor, go to the doctor. Don't treat chronic stuff with things you haven't gotten approved by your doctor. Like, they've gone to school for this shit for a reason. I don't understand. Yeah, that's my little soapbox rant.
Oh.
Like, don't treat high blood pressure with plants you're picking off the side of the road, please. Like, go to the doctor.
Well, Jen with one N wants to know if you like Ghost. I'm assuming the Swayze movie from the 80s is what she's talking about.
I mean, I'm all for Swayze. I prefer Roadhouse over Ghost, but I mean, no. Well, I mean, let's be fair. I'm an '80s baby. Dirty Dancing is my favorite Swayze movie. It's just it's a thing. Like the band. I do not. I don't know the band.
I forgot the band was even a thing. I'm probably gonna lose like half of my subscribers right here and now. I don't care for them. They're too homogenous. They're too much like every other band like them out there. At least as far as their sound goes, it's boring.
My music tastes are anything except rap that I can't understand. Like, I love 80s hair bands. I like flip, and the name just like flew out of my head. It's an orchestra that I used to listen to with my grandpa all the time. It's the one that everybody sets their Christmas lights to.
Trans-Siberian Orchestra?
Yes. Jazz. Like, of course, I love Celtic Woman. I listen to bluegrass and country and people that play weird instruments like spoons, and there's two cellos. Oh, have you heard two cellos?
I've watched a couple of their videos on YouTube.
Like, they do like Metallica and shit on cellos. It's awesome. And then there's the Harp Twins that do the same thing with the metal music, but they play it on harps. Those are awesome too.
That's definitely interesting. Julie LaVoice would like to know if you've looked at the old Foxfire books.
I have not. If you've got a link or something, DM it to me on Twitter, and I'll check them out.
Let's see. I kind of got lost in the chat because I knew I'd forget Julie's question if I just let it go on. So let me take a look at the chat, see if there are any other questions. And before this goes a little too nuts in the chat, no, I don't have dyslexia. I just suck at remembering names. Never had that one. Let's see. I forgot what cupboard. Nice, Orla. Forgetting what a cupboard is. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions. Actually, Randolph corrected craziest to most interesting. So what's the most interesting thing you've encountered in paganism?
Interesting. My brain is just tired tonight. I don't. The way Pagan Pride handles their events is really interesting to me because they've managed to. Well, it depends on the location, but I've been to a couple of different ones that have managed to kind of separate the adult stuff from the family stuff. So there's no risk of kids wandering into a nude ritual or anything. Like, they've done it really, really, really well. And I feel like pride events could take some tips there. Like, I love just pride events, but some of them I might not want to take my kids to because there's more than the normal amount of exposure of things that, 6-year-olds and 3-year-olds probably. But I don't know. I love pagan pride events. There's so many people from so many different paths. And for that, everybody gets along. Nobody's screaming at each other that their path is the one right path and you're an idiot. And it's just everybody's chill and has a good time.
All right. Randolph's got another question. Is Halloween an important holiday for pagans?
It depends on your past. It is for some, it's not for others. For me, I celebrate Samhain, which the history behind it and how I celebrate it may not be all matched up. I've got a lot more research to do, to be honest. For me, it's a combination of New Year's and remembering the dead. So it's debated whether or not it's supposed to be remembering the dead as far as historical accuracy, but from my understanding, it was the New Year's time for the Celtic people. So.
All right. That's interesting. That's actually probably the first time a lot of people have ever heard someone pronounced correctly, because the way it's spelled, you'd think it's pronounced Samhain.
Yeah. The funny thing is, that's how I read it in my head. I read it Samhain, but then when I go to say it, I say Samhain. So it's, yeah.
All right. So I do have one more question for you before I have you do your self-promoting to round out the interview. Is there anything from being Southern Baptist that has stuck with you and has kind of given you a little bit of trouble shaking off? Like fear about or something like that.
And it's something that I was, for the most part, able to shake completely probably a couple of years ago. The puritanical views on sex, that was the most difficult one to work through. And I finally got the last of it. Like, I hope I'm not derailing here or bringing in a topic that's not for this interview, but I'm in a BDSM relationship. So being the submissive in that type of relationship, it took a lot of work, because that my knee-jerk reaction to that was, no, that's what they tried to indoctrinate into me, and that's just not me. But it turns out, yeah, that's kind of me, and I kind of like it. So.
Oh, yeah. I think the church would have preferred you be a submissive a little differently, but
Probably.
you know, more of a stand in front of the stove and let your husband impregnate you at the same time. That I think would be more what Southern Baptists are after, whereas BDSM is a little. I don't want my channel taken down, so here.
Yeah, there is a lot more consent in BDSM than in your typical Christian's viewpoint.
Yeah, especially when you begin to consider informed consent. And I'm definitely not going to take this opportunity to promote the sex ed video I did with Silver Lena talking about consent, where she came on and talked about kinky consent. Not going to push that at all.
And I have got to watch that. I have been so busy. Like, I got the notification for it, and I'm like, I need to watch this. And I have been so busy. I haven't had time to sit down and really watch it.
You know, it happens. So yeah, like I said, I like to end all my interviews the same way they start. So could you do a little self-promotion, talk about yourself, talk about your channel?
Sure. The channel is called What the Craft, and it's me and my husband talking about whatever we feel like talking about. And he's an atheist and I'm a pagan, so we bring the two different viewpoints to whatever we're talking about at the time. And you get to see us kind of like get gur at each other on a couple of videos. But don't worry, we're all laughing and fine and sleeping in the same bed after the video. So
that's good, because the end result would be him sleeping on the couch. Otherwise,
maybe, I don't know.
well, But yeah, that's gonna do it for this one, everybody. For those of you who are just now getting here, I just spent the last almost hour interviewing the better half of What the Craft, and hopefully I'll have the other half on at some point in the future. So
I'll tie him to a chair eventually.
so you're hang on. I thought you were the submissive. You've lost me.
It's
I
okay.
kid. Um, but yeah, if you enjoyed it, please leave the interview a like and follow down in the description over to Witch's channel and Twitter, which she shares with her husband.
Actually, I made him get his own.
Good. What's that?
I made him get his own Twitter. So yeah, that one is all me. That's why there's so much food on there right now.
That'll do it. But yeah, definitely head down to the description, follow it over to her channel and her husband's channel, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely subscribe, and notification bell always helps. They haven't made anything recently, but hopefully this interview lights a fire under them and they start again.
Yeah, we're hoping to get back onto it maybe in the next couple weeks. So hopefully.
There you go. But yeah, definitely leave this interview a like. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. All the other fun stuff, Patreon, Discord, Twitter. Follow me all over there. So yeah, take it easy, everyone, and see you in the next one.